Let's bring in Jenny Horne for the numbers. Lam Research down about 3% this morning. Taiwan Semi up about 4.5%. Let's start with TSM, Jenny, because looking at the numbers, I really felt like this could have gone either way. I'm a little surprised to see that it's rallying as much as it is. Some of these estimates were missed. Some of the build out and expansion that they were planning on has been dialed back a little bit, but maybe the market likes some less spending. What's going on here?
Yeah, and I mean, no growth, actually, I should say. Like, we were seeing things contract on a year-over-year basis.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's also something that I thought we could see perhaps as some selling in reaction to just the fact that this is a company that's still actually spending money to expand, but we're not seeing that reflected in its quarterly results. So, and they did see third quarter revenue decline almost 15%. To around $17.3 billion. That did beat consensus. Earnings for bottom line we did exceed forecasts, but again showed some weakness on a year-over-year basis. We did see the fact that their total wafer revenue was around 37% of their overall revenue this quarter, as well as we did see some of their more advanced chips accounted for around 59% of their overall total wafer revenue. Their gross margin, though, contracted 610 basis points to around 54.3%. This was due to these lower capacity utilization as well as higher electricity costs. Then overall, their operating margin also dropped by 890 basis points, and they did hold around 46.6 billion at the end of this quarter. Now, going forward, as far as outlook goes, because I think this is what matters, the most to the street at this point, we did see they expect their fourth quarter revenue to fall slightly higher actually than what had been expected at around 8.8 to 19.6 billion versus estimates of around 18.7 billion. So that was a bright spot. We also did see they look to spend around 32 billion on their overall upgrading capacity in 2023. That was the lower end of what they previously projected, but still, I mean, 32 billion is nothing to just write off here. So all in all, Taiwan, I would say, just goes to show what has been the narrative all year long. We're still seeing weaker demand for some of these smartphones. We're still seeing weaker demand for devices. Seems like in terms of all things hardware, that has still not been able to recover to the extent that the street had been expecting, but they are still able to slightly exceed at least what the street had been bracing for. Again, 5% move is wild to me, but we just opened, so not to discount this move, but we'll have to wait and see how things settle here.
Yeah, this one is, reflecting a lot of the still very entrenched optimism around an upswing for the cycle that simply has not manifested yet. I do think that their cut of CapEx spending is actually what the market likes here, since they're still not generating growth. There's also just such high expectations with such a bullish outlook from analysts and from traders, and this whole group and this stock is a major part of the semiconductor story now, that I guess people are going to find whatever positive there is and run with it. But I still am just having a lot of trouble envisioning this huge AI knock-on effect when the only company really showing any imminent, immediate results is NVIDIA. And so with other businesses trying to build out their capacity, I mean, the better hope that things are as surprisingly positive as expected down the road, or else they're going to be in really big trouble. So I just have a little trouble wrapping my head around it.
I completely agree, because I feel like even what we saw this week, even with NVIDIA, with some of these China headwinds we're seeing with restrictions on their more advanced chips, is these are not just pure play AI companies. I mean, they have other revenue streams, significant revenue streams. It seems like we've just discounted, but like, for example, some of these companies have seen really lackluster like gaming growth, hardware growth, software growth, and it's like that is all just been completely forgotten. Right, and it's like we forget that these are companies, they're not AI companies, they're actually semiconductor companies, which means a lot more than just AI.
Totally, and that whole macro backdrop for semis is just not impressive right now. We are still, the idea is that we're troughing, but we're still declining on an annual basis. So if AI doesn't save the day, none of their other real verticals are looking very good. It feels like Lam Research basically, not necessarily proved that point, but certainly supported that point, because as a supplier, without the actual like big innovative growth engines of the new chips, Lam's earnings were not as well received.
They were not, and they're one now red name in a sea of green, which is remarkable on the fact that their report wasn't objectively that different than Taiwan Semiconductor. I mean, we did see they reported their third consecutive quarter of falling sales, a trend that they do expect to persist now into 2024. We did see the fact that the shares are up 53% this year. So, mind you, when this name was initially yesterday reacting to their earnings, it was like a modest move to the downside. Now, 3%, 3.25% seems more significant here. Now, they did say that they have been seeing some weakness in recent quarters by this overall slump in the semiconductor industry. Like we were just discussing, their CEO of the company is seeing a cyclically soft year for customer spending on overall equipment, but the company is still investing pretty heavily in their future growth. Now, what is interesting now about going into this new year is this company does have some sizable exposure to not only the tensions in China, but also some DRAM contributions, which they do expect to remain a weak spot now into 2024, with the thinking that we'll see some improvement in some of their major headwinds sometime in 2024. And I think there's a lack of definitive wording there that makes you say, okay, so when will we see things start to improve? When will we see this soft demand start to pick up again? They didn't really give good clarity on that. So I think that could lead you to say, if you don't have a direction as the company's head, well, how do we have a sense of direction of when things start to improve? I think, of course, it's just right now there's a lot of things weighing on the semiconductor industry, but you've got to be, I think, more definitive with your language on earnings calls, Oliver.
Yeah. All right. So it does, I think, this slowness of the overall sector show up in Lam Research. I mean, look, expectations are expectations. If you beat them, then, you know, the market it's going to have a hard time really selling off when you beat. So I think we're kind of getting some of that effect in a few of these names. Lam not so much, though, because it's just a pretty dull report here. And it certainly is a meaningful one, but it's not enough to bring the sector down after the pop in TSM. Thanks, Jenny. All right, Taiwan Semi leading the chip narrative and the AI build-out narrative still. Stocks are up. That's the key group here to keep the NASDAQ intact.